Hi there, Jennifer Roberts here with a tutorial for X-Plane. This video was recorded in X-Plane 1121 R2. Today we're going to take a look at getting started with X-Plane VR. X-Plane 1120 supports native VR with Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and Windows Mixed Reality. Vive and WMR users have one extra step for setup. You'll need to install Steam VR if you don't already have it. And WMR users will also need to install Windows Mixed Reality for Steam VR from the Steam library. Now let's start X-Plane and get VR set up in there. As long as your VR headset is attached to your computer, there will be a VR hardware tab here in Settings. Let's talk about all the options here. Check this box to enable the mouse cursor. This is a great option for people who don't have controllers, so they can interact with the VR cockpit basically the same way they would in non-VR mode. Note that you can also turn it on and off by binding the Toggle 3D mouse command to a keyboard key, a joystick button, or even a VR controller button. The VR Manipulator Settings mostly deal with how the aircraft's yoke behaves. By default, Realistic mode is selected. In this mode, you interact with the yoke or stick the way you would expect. For example, if it's a Cessna yoke, pull or push for pitch, or rotate your arm around the center of it to roll. Ergonomic mode, on the other hand, forces all yokes to behave the same way. In ergonomic mode, your wrist is used to control pitch and roll. The position of your hand means nothing, so you can just rest your arm on an armrest and fly comfortably. You can adjust the sensitivity of this mode for greater control or responsiveness. Lastly, by default, latch to yoke manipulators is on, so that when you click on a yoke manipulator, your controller will stay attached to it until you click again, so you don't have to hold down the trigger forever. Now we'll check the box to actually enable VR, which will put us in the virtual hangar. This is where you'll access the main menu, all settings, and any pop-up warning screens. Let's go ahead and set up a flight. I'll pick the usual suspects, the Cessna 172 at Seattle. As you can see, I'm really not in a great spot here for my flight. I wasn't wearing my headset when I enabled VR, so it thought I was in a much different location in my play area than I actually am. So now that I'm situated where I want to be, I'm going to press the menu button on my controller, the 3-line button here. That corresponds to the A button on the Oculus Rift controller, which is the VR set I have. This opens the menu system. I'll select the very top option, Get in Pilot Seat. This will recenter my view. This is probably the most important trick to know about using X-Plane VR, because this option will work anytime you need to fix your view, even if you can't see the controller or the menu. Now let's go over the other controller menu options in clockwise order. Use the thumbstick on the Oculus or the touchpad on the Vive to move around menus and submenus. Then use the trigger on the controller to select an option. Our first option here is Access Flight Configuration. You can pause, use replay, change view, which has submenus, the 3D cockpit, circle, tower chase, and ride-along views, Windows accesses the pop-up window such as ground services, ATC, loading a checklist, a text file, the settings, and the map. Finally, the menu option opens the standard text menu that's across the top of the screen in non-VR. Note that if you are using only the VR mouse cursor, you can right-click the mouse to access this menu. There are a few other handy features on the VR controllers by default. You can move around the aircraft or the world by using teleport. Push down on the thumbstick on the Oculus or the touchpad on the Vive to see a blue arc with a circle at the end, which is your landing spot. As you rotate the thumbstick, you'll move the red line on the circle, which indicates your view direction when the teleport is executed. Some parts of the aircraft, such as seats, have a hot spot which will light up and snap you to that location. VR Quick Zoom is a command that you can bind to your controller or a key. When you press the button, it zooms your view in so you can see distant things a bit clearer. When you release it, your view resets. Laser manipulation can also be used to interact with manipulators while using the controller from a distance. To do so, lightly and partially squeeze the trigger and you'll see a green laser appear. Now aim that laser at the thing you want to interact with and grab it by squeezing the trigger the rest of the way in. Once you've grabbed the manipulator, interact with it the way you normally would. So in this case, I'd push my hand forward to push the throttle in. Remember, you can modify the controller setup in joystick settings. There is a caveat here though. There are certain reserved VR axes and commands that must exist somewhere between your controllers, such as Touchpad X, Touchpad Y, Trigger, and VR Menu, for example. These must exist on at least one controller. Well, now that you know the ins and outs of using X-Plane VR, why not try a flight in the new Aerolite 103 for the ultimate VR experience? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.